Good morning or good afternoon now. Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. I was just looking at a comment on locals. I guess different time zone. Saw good morning. So good morning to you back, depending on what time zone. But it's afternoon here. If you like the videos, don't forget to like them and share them far and wide. You know what? Like every Monday, we're going to have to do a Sunday recap. Okay. Because as we're doing book club, the repeats of the Sunday shows are going, and there's only so much time we can dedicate to talking about current event stuff, but we usually do hit on some things that are important of what's going on, right? We all know, and well, maybe not all of us, but most of us watching the show know that the media lies a lot. Okay. A lot. And I'm reading on locals, and it's funny because I heard it too. And in my area, just to give you some context, I saw your post on locals. You're going to know who I'm talking about in a second. But, we got to get the kids up in the morning, get them ready for school. One, if not two, she's ready in time. We'll drive. He's still young. And we'll give the other one a lift if she's ready in time and she doesn't take the bus. And there's conservative talk radio. I mean, like a lot of it. There are Christian channels. But in between in the news breaks, there's news from left-wing news outlets. And I'm not going to go through all of the data. I mean, you could research it yourself or you could just take my word for it. But I absolutely also heard exactly what this person on locals posted, which is talking about gasoline being up, talking about ahead of Easter, how egg prices are up. None of that is true. It's kind of a long segment. There's one on immigration that especially I wanted to go over, but it's like a 3-minute segment. And I don't know if we're going to have time to do all of that. But ultimately, this is the reality that we have in this country. And it's something that you just kind of have to deal with. And you have to, if you're, obviously, we know who's on what side. If you're a Democrat, the media is working to help you. If you're a Republican, they're lying to hurt you. A lot. I mean, it's just demonstrably true that gasoline is down. It's demonstrably false that egg prices are up. In fact, last month, egg prices fell to a lower level than they were under the first Trump administration. So, I mean, this is just something you can easily look up. Now, what they do, and just to give you guys an explanation here, what they do is play little games and they fail to provide context and they fail to provide, or they'll obfuscate. So they'll fail to provide context and they'll obfuscate in order to make what they're saying as true as it can be in order for them to get away with saying it on air. Because I heard the same thing during the news break in a local talk radio show that is not, I mean, he's a Republican, but he is not a Trumplican. This guy, a good guy. I get along with him very well. We're friends. And he's a good guy, but this is not somebody you would consider to be a liberal nor a Trump supporter. He's pretty much your average Southern Republican establishment guy. And he's not a fire breather, right? And he's got a popular show. In between, though, he's got to put on air what pays the bills. And in between, during the news breaks, I went back and I looked. What they were doing is literally citing weekly fluctuations without telling people that those are weekly fluctuation in egg prices. So if egg prices have fallen, and I'm using dummy numbers here, but I mean, actually, the second one's not that much of a dummy. But if egg prices have fallen, let's say 13% since Donald Trump took office, and it's not that, but let's just be conservative here. And let's say they fell 10% since Donald Trump took office. But last week, egg prices rebounded 16%, or not even 6% from that. Okay. Yeah, actually, we do have to use the real price because it doesn't work. Let's say egg prices fell around 30% since Trump took office, but last week they rebounded 6%. Egg prices are not up 6% under Donald Trump. Okay. They are down 24%. Okay. But this is what they do. And they get away with it because, of course, there's nobody there that's trying to fact check them. There is certainly nobody who cares enough about Trump and his supporters or their agenda or their cause to be honest and tell the truth. So that's all very well and good. And we all know that. But then it gets to the question of, is it just about Trump and his supporters? Because if you're lying like this, then it really is about the country. Then it is about you not liking or having a respect for the people of the country to tell them the truth. And that's ultimately what is going to happen with every single issue that Republicans are going to tackle. And that's just part of the messaging war. And that reality is how we have to understand it when we're looking at who is winning and who is losing these messaging wars. The Sunday show roundup, okay, or lion, whatever you want to call it, is the start of the messaging war for the week. They could carry over messages from the prior week. They could continue talking about issues from the prior week, but it is the beginning of the messaging war for that week. You have to kind of think about politics and how people think about things when you're looking at it from the media's perspective as a weekly cycle. All right. Think of it like that. Now, there are different cycles. There's 24-hour news cycles, the 48-hour news cycle. You get what I'm saying. But the Sunday show is the beginning of it. And if you can lay out the foundation of your message on Sunday and successfully roll with it the rest of the week, then you're thought generally to have won that week's messaging war. Now, you and I, all of you out there, if you've been watching me a while, you know that the American mind, the American political mind collectively does not work that way. Okay. As much as they want it to be the case, it does not work that way. That's, by the way, why we're doing quarterly surveys now, which you can go and support in the link below, which is in the video description. All right. It's a public polling project. Go check it out. Public opinion simply does not change over short periods of time in the way that public pollsters and the media want you to think that it does. Some pollsters are just not good at their job. And those fluctuations, especially wild gyrations, are artifacts of the polls themselves. How that pollster conducted the poll is subjected to some sort, maybe response bias. There are various forms of response bias. We use it as a general term, but there are various forms of them, or even social biases, more specifically, depending on the current events that may be going on. But it does not mean that they are going to wildly change their opinion over the course of 7 days, okay, or even 48 hours. It takes time. That is why, as I try to scream from the rooftops and repeat and beat like a dead horse all before the 24 election, Donald Trump was always going to win that election. Kamala Harris was never ahead. Those were artifacts of the poll and then just your run-of-the-mill bull in propaganda polling. And that's reality. All right. But we're going to start to do this because this is how the media sees this. This is the game they play. And we'll basically, over time, we'll take a step back in a bird's eye view and we'll say, look, as probably, usually when we're doing the quarterly survey, look, who has been winning the longer duration messaging war? I can tell you right now, going in, because of course we're all going to be focused on the midterms sooner than you think. There'll be primaries. There was another campaign, a big one that was announced. And if we have time, I'll talk about it. I do not think it's the right move for Republicans, but this is what they do. We'll take a look at it over the long period and we'll see how it is impacted based on the generic ballot and other stuff that we're going to be doing. However, we can see right now that Democrats do not have the lead that they had going into Trump's first incumbent midterm. All right. They already had built up a pretty significant lead. Republicans ended up winning the national, but because of the realignment and the lack of ground game, they did not do as well on the ground as the polling suggested they would going to 2022. But even then, you could see that they already had a lead built in for a while before the midterms. Why? Because again, these things do not dramatically change. In 2014, you could actually see Democrats, if you go back and look, you'll see until the summer coming up on Labor Day, Democrats had a consistent lead. That was flawed public polling. That was not changing opinions and changing moods. And I know that because that was the first year that we began to drip some public polling. 16 was the first year we did a lot of it. And we could see that Republicans always had the advantage in the Arkansas Senate race against Mark Pryor, against Bradley in Iowa. Joni Ernst, or whoever the Republican candidate was going to be, always had the advantage there. In North Carolina, it was tight, but whomever, and that was Tom Tillis that year, that was the year he was first elected, whomever was going to be the Republican nominee was going to have the advantage. The mood of the electorate was with Republicans. In 2024, the mood was with Republican. Really, it was with Trump. The mood was with Trump, and he had the numbers too. It just wasn't the top lines that were a little bit different, and eventually at the end they converged. Sometimes you'll see that. That's not what happened in 24. He was going to win. He was always going to win. And that was really it. I mean, that's it. And you know what? We could just quickly reference it right now and then move on. But whom I was referring to, whom I'm referring is Mike Rogers, who is again taking another bite at the apple in the state of Michigan. He has announced that he will run again for the Republican nomination for U.S. Senate in the state of Michigan. This is a very typical case of Republicans not learning their lesson. This man could not win while Donald Trump was on the ballot. He's not going to win when Donald Trump is not on the ballot. He will lose, and I will tell you why he will lose. First and foremost, Michigan is not a competitive state unless you're Donald Trump. And this is something Republicans have yet to recognize. You can have an election, like a very low turnout midterm election, where maybe the mood is with you, and somebody like a Governor Rick Snyder is able to win. Only because so many Democrats stayed home. But the difference was back then, who were those Democrats staying home? Well, they were the ones who now vote for Donald Trump. And they were the ones who did not vote for Mike Rogers, even though they voted for Donald Trump. Also, there's the addition of a newer coalition for Trump that didn't vote for Rogers and probably won't vote at all if Republicans continue to put these rhino deep state, pro-war, pro-immigration, pro-free trade candidates up as their nominees. If you look at where Mike Rogers fell short and Donald Trump clobbered him, it's so very clear. There are three groups that are important. One, Mike Rogers won the Hispanic vote. It's not a huge vote in Michigan, but it's not an insignificant vote. 5 to 6, maybe 7%. It's not insignificant. And it's usually around 5. But Trump won it by more. He did. Slightly more. But he won it by more. That wasn't it. It was black men in the Detroit area who did not vote for Mike Rogers. It was white working class, former Democrats in Saginaw and in Macomb and in Monroe who voted for Donald Trump and didn't vote for Mike Rogers. Many of them left their ballots blank. Go look at the undervote. They will not vote for these Republicans. And as long as they keep putting these people up, especially in the industrial Midwest, they will lose these races, and usually probably handily. For crying out loud, see Crawford in Wisconsin a couple of weeks ago. They just don't learn their lessons. They refuse to acknowledge it because then there's a couple of things they have to come to grips with. The people who make the money in the Republican Party aren't going to make the money anymore. They've been doing a very good job holding on for dear life in the Trump era. They have been doing a very good job because they sabotage the MAGA candidates and MAGA consultants. They turn the spigot off and they can't fundraise. They pick up the phone and through very creative means make a candidate's walking team walk for someone else or not walk at all through blackmail or threats or both. They've been very creative at sabotaging their own party's candidates that they don't have control of the campaign flow, finance flow. This way they can say, see, noobs, they don't know what they're doing. All right. And then they get a hold of the next campaign anyway, and they lose. And they lose bad. This is the way it's going to be. You've even seen some MAGA candidates struggle without Trump on the ballot. And it's because of those people. Those people are hurting the other MAGA candidates that are Trump aligned and have the Trump agenda because it adds to this general sense of distrust of other Republicans. They don't have time. If you didn't see Jack Posobiec and I's conversation last week, you should check it out. They don't have time, this group of people in particular, and in many cases the interest, that's true too, but it's mostly time. They don't have time to separate the flock. Republicans have proven themselves untrustworthy, and that's it. In their mind, that's it. And unless they see somebody working for that vote, and unless they see somebody authentically aligned and supported by Trump, they don't get that vote. It's very, very clear. All right. So again, I'm just telling you right now, you don't have to be the People's Pundit to know this. If Mike Rogers gets the nomination, Mike Rogers will lose. Okay. And he'll probably lose pretty comfortably. All right. But back to the whole messaging thing, which is really most important. All right. So you have the Sunday shows. You have all of these people running around. You have Trump's people arguing in favor of tariffs. You have Elizabeth Warren saying, I'm going to challenge the president's power. This is not even constitutional because there is no national emergency. And all of a sudden she cares about the Constitution. There's no national emergency. And that's what the Constitution requires for the president to levy tariffs. So says Senator Elizabeth Warren, Democrat from Massachusetts. See, to the ruling class, the suffering and the downtrodden neighborhoods all over the industrial Midwest, Mid-Atlantic, and even parts of the South and West. I mean, it's everywhere. Their suffering is not a national emergency. Their inability to pay their bills and experience real wage growth is not a national emergency. The national security concerns that are part of the Trump administration's argument, although I would argue it is not enough of a point. That to her is not a national emergency. It's not a national emergency that we cannot produce our own rare materials, rare minerals specifically, that are used in ICBM and other weapon guided systems. It's not a national security to Senator Warren, the liberal from Massachusetts, that we cannot produce enough antibiotics in our country ourselves if there was a real significant national medical crisis like a pandemic or an infection or something like that. We would not be able to turn our industrial base into something that could successfully meet the needs of our domestic population in the event of a crisis. We saw that during COVID. We saw it. We could not even manufacture enough face masks, even if face masks worked, which they don't. None of that is a crisis, according to Elizabeth Warren. So that's their message. That and prices are going to go up. And like I started off the show with, the media is going to lie and help them, even though the price of eggs is down. Even though the price of gas is down. Not only at the consumer level, producer level prices are down. We have all sorts of crazy, and it doesn't matter if it's not true. So just remember that. It doesn't matter if it's not true. You have the corporatist left, which is, let's call it what it is, fascist. The real definition of fascism has nothing to do with race. That is the Nazis' specific breed, had to do with ethnicity. That is their specific form of fascism. But fascism has an economic definition, which is this basically public-private partnership where the public where the public space tells the private space what to do. They're basically in charge of production. They're in charge of capital. They're in charge of CapEx, all of that. And it just looks like you have a private space. The veneer of capitalism when it's not really capitalism. That is what the modern Democratic Party stands for in today's America. Now, the problem is there is the wing, the Mike Rogers wing, the free trade wing. of the Republican Party that also has been going along with this for many years until Donald Trump. That's just a fact. Even many of them who claimed that they do not agree with any of this, like, the legislature and the executive branch getting in the business of doling out competitive advantages to some sectors and not others, and some businesses and not others, some donors and not others, right? They say that, then they get in Washington, D.C., and they realize, holy shit, there's a lot of money to make here, especially when I'm out of Congress. So I'm in. And then there's also the case of them just being cowards. We've been over this a million times. It's easier to accept the status quo and play ball. Seniority and the ability to protect favored legislation that was prior past legislation is the name of the game in Washington. And nobody has the courage to upset that status quo. Why? Maybe you want to get something done later, folks, but you did not achieve trustworthiness with your colleagues. Trustworthiness is a very soft word for something that's very hard, rigid, and dark. And that is, you support mine and I will support yours. It's favor trading. And that's what they do. Quid pro quos. And along comes Trump, and along comes MAGA, and he really does try to do this, which is why a lot in this party can't stand him. The first one I want to play, I want to go out of order a little bit, actually, because I'm going to play a couple. It's already 2:22. I want to play a couple. I want to listen to what he says. And this is, of course, my buddy, and the media hates this guy. And then we're going to go and look at two examples of what he's talking about. And then, of course, we'll look at something from today. Because, of course, Steve is reacting to what he heard all Sunday show long. Steve knows what I just told you. That the Sunday show is the beginning of the weekly messaging war. And they're trying to lay down the foundation of their message for the week. And he did not feel the Trump administration did a good enough job, sound familiar? Did a good enough job countering that. And he's now getting to the point of a little bit of frustration because the right people are not delivering this message. What he is basically saying is we are not seeing enough of the right people. We're seeing too much of the wrong people. It's essentially the argument I've been making for weeks. The president needs somebody whom he talks to. Give it 10 to 20 minutes a day without anyone else in the White House to say, this is what people need to hear. This is what they're hearing now. By the way, we tested my drug addiction analogy over trade, and guess what? It was through the roof. Stay tuned on that. But through the roof. They're not talking to people in terms that people understand. And I think Steve is going to say something here that's going to help explain why.
Have a trading order that puts America first and puts American citizens first, and most importantly, starts to bring back high value added manufacturing to the United States. And no, Howard Lutnick, is not going to all be done by robots. We're not doing this so we can set up so robots have a better life. In fact, I don't know why Lutnick's still doing media. Let me be blunt. Lutnick, who is Elon's pick for Secretary of Treasury, I think he's close to being an unmitigated disaster. We should see a lot less of Lutnick on TV. Hassett, Navarro, Jameson Greer, the trade rep, and particularly Scott Bessent. And I think Bessent's being very smart in choosing and being very selective on the media. We have to have a clear message and people understand what the process is, and we have a process. It's a very well thought through. And this, by the way, Stephen Miller should be doing more about trade and about this new economic order that we're trying to hammer through, and not allow Wall Street and the corporatists in Silicon Valley to essentially give everything away to the Chinese Communist Party.
Okay, so there it is. To essentially give everything away to the Chinese Communist Party. All right, let's listen to what Steve's talking about here. Okay, now to somebody like probably you and me, Lutnick is just fine. Lutnick is speaking in terms it's that you and I really understand, or most of you out there, probably understand. Your news junkies, your political junkies. But for the normal people out there, Lutnick is not a good spokesman. All right, he is not a good spokesman at all. And he is not listen, if they see nothing else of the interview and they don't know anything else of what they're being told, what they're hearing, they know authenticity. Does Lutnick look like them, or sound like them, or speak like them, or talk about trade, tariffs, and jobs the way they understand it, or how they see them in their world? No. Lutnick would be a great ambassador to Wall Street. He'd be a great ambassador to Silicon Valley. But he is not the person to have on ABC this week, as he was again this week. Let's put him up, and you'll see what I'm talking about here in a second. Close this. Let's go.
Mr. Secretary, we're really out of time, but a very quick question. How concerned are you about what's happening to the U.S. dollar? We have seen the dollar at having its worst week in 3 years. There are concerns about a weakening dollar because of all this uncertainty. How concerned are you about that?
I am not concerned about it. We are focused on our tariff policy. We are focused. We have so many countries coming in to negotiate with us. The president has given us the ability, let's go get these great deals done. And we're on it, and the president's on it. And we're really, really focused on delivering the best thing for the American people.
All right, Secretary Howard Lutnick, thank you very much for joining us.
All right. So maybe that sounded all very well and good. The words were right to some extent. The words were okay. But that's not really the sum total of how you get your message across, right? Now I'm going to shut up and I'm going to do it. Whoops. I'm going to shut up and I'm going to do it as quickly as I possibly can here. All right. So let's hear the Bannon suggestion. And you tell me if you think one is easier to understand, or one gets the message across, one speaks the language of an average person better than the other. Okay. And I'm not saying average. I'm, in a bad way here. Not at all. Not at all. I'm totally on the side of the average person. They are not represented. That's entirely what my job is, to listen to them and then convey what it is they are saying, what they believe, what they want, because they don't have any representation. I mean, my job is to deliver that accurately. It's to listen and deliver that message accurately to whomever, whether it's you guys out there listening or it's whatever, client, whatever. All right. You tell me what you think. Here's Peter Navarro, who Bannon suggested we see more of.
So this is unfolding exactly like we thought it would in a dominant scenario. What's going on here is we start with the observation. I don't think you would disagree with me at all. The world cheats us. They've been cheating us for decades.
Simple.
They cheat us with tariffs, higher tariffs. But more importantly, they cheat us with the so-called non-tariff barriers. It's the VAT taxes, the dumping.
Stop. Just stop. Listen, you hear how he delivers that? Do you hear how Peter delivers that so much differently? All right. He says the words we need to hear, but he says them in a way where he's like, I know, stupid words we all need to know, right? They're cheats, though. That's what you got to know. They're cheats. They've been in us, man, forever. He delivers it in a much more, I don't want to say common. That's not the word. It is layman, however, right? This country was made by laymen. I mean, we all talk about the founders and the revolutionaries. This country has always been a bottom-up movement country. It's always been done by the, change has always been affected by the yeoman and the layman and the average pastor. And that's who has made the country what it is. That's the heartbeat and the soul of this country, not Wall Street. Not Silicon Valley, not Jamie Dimon, not Howard Lutnick. They don't speak like others speak. Look, we normally say, who would you rather have a beer with? We normally say, who would you rather be at a New Year's Eve party with? Well, it's Easter. Who would you rather come to your house for Easter and shoot the shit with you? Peter Navarro or Howard Lutnick? Come on. Let's just listen a little while longer.
Currency manipulation, the technical barriers that keep our autos out of Japan, the agricultural barriers that keep our pork out of Australia or Europe. They're doing that to the tune of $1.2 trillion of wealth a year that we transfer now abroad. and
Simple.
$18 trillion of wealth since we started running deficits. You know how much $18 trillion of America that could buy? So that's the problem we're grappling with. So we have.
He doesn't even say it. He just poses the question like every normal person in America would do when talking about this stuff. You know how much $18 trillion would buy in America? That's it. You don't actually have to deliver on this policy wonkish Paul Ryan, like Jack Kemp kind of thing. Let me break it down for everybody who speaks like that. All the free traders out there, you were unpopular. The only thing that ever resonated was cheaper shit. If you would have told them cheaper shit in exchange for you losing your job, they would have had a much different reaction. You left the second part out. And the only addition, well, and he does do it. You're just not hearing it yet. But the addition to the argument I would suggest for Peter is, I understand, China wants, we all want to, and I don't want to use the word scapegoat because scapegoat's not, scapegoat implies like they're not to blame. They are, and still, I mean, you can't expect China to do anything other than what's good for China. So it's not that I don't blame China. I don't put the singular fault with them. Peter, you have to talk about the damn politicians who sold the country out. You do it so well. You have to do that more. In fact, that should lead. Every time you talk about China screwing us over and cheating, it should be prefaced by all of these pieces of crap on both sides of the aisle who sold you out and let China cheat us. You know how much 18 trillion will go? You know how much you could buy in America with 18 trillion? Done. But very clearly two different styles, and very clearly one works with the industrial Midwest and the Mid-Atlantic and everywhere else in the country, and except for three. Except for three places. Four. Well, no, three. New York City, outside of the working parts of the boroughs and the wealthy parts of the boroughs. So let's just call it Wall Street and Rockefeller Center. That part of New York. DC and the burbs that surround it, and Silicon Valley. That's it. Those arguments aren't even willing arguments in the burbs of Los Angeles, folks. They're not. If the Republican brand wasn't so crappy, maybe they could keep up with Donald Trump in that area. But they can't. That's why we are calling them Republicans. All they have demonstrated is that they can't do this. They can't do that. The worst thing the Trump administration could possibly do is start acting like Republicans. That is not why you ran ahead of them everywhere. Okay? Or everywhere that wins you elections. Everywhere that wins you elections. All right, we're going to have to remove Peter real quick from the screen. We're going to have to take a real quick break here. Yeah, I mean, look, I think I made it abundantly clear. If I haven't, we're going to go over more after the break. I just want to say, for those of you who also were our little willing test subjects for Rumble Studio, you may recognize this company because we actually brought them up and then they reached out. And especially when it comes to, we were just talking about the state of Michigan. We love our friends at Jam and Bean, of course. And if you are a medium roast drinker, Jam and Bean is definitely the place for you. Okay. However, going through that Rumble thing, and then we were trying to integrate different things. 1775 reached out. And I got to tell you, I love this company. All right. So real quick, just to give you an idea, that's all. That's not all, folks. What are you doing here? Come on, man. We're not done yet. I keep forgetting to end the show with that, by the way. That's supposed to be the end of the show. Always. We need a little beep. Can we do that? Can we find something like that? I bet we can. But there is something going on this week that I'm going to tell you about, even though I'm going to try to remind you as much as we can, because like our friends at like Freedom Gold and stuff, there is a prize pool thing going on. I want to shout it out to you before it's the end of the week, because that'll be it. All right. But of course, I'm talking about 1775 coffee, which is amazing. And if you do like other kinds of like dark or richer roasts, they're definitely the ones to go to. But imagine having a cup of coffee, drinking a cup of coffee, and winning a prize of over $100,000. I kid you not. This is what they're doing. A brand new Cybertruck and 30 grand in cash, which you definitely could win. But this is your last week to enter, and it ends April 20th. 1775 Coffee is fueling the giveaway. Get it? Get it? See what I did there? And every dollar you spend equals an entry. No hoops, no selling your data to some tech giant, just small batch, single origin coffee that's roasted weekly and proudly supports free speech, independent media like yours truly, and your freedom. It's the official coffee of free thinkers, hard workers, and the Rumble crowd that doesn't cave to the narrative. If Rumble is the platform for uncensored truth, then 1775 is the coffee that keeps it all moving. Go to 1775coffee.com. The link's in the description with the video as always. Use the code TPP to save 15% and enter before the giveaway ends. Okay. This is very important. Again, like I said, it ends on April 20th. All right. Link is in the description. TPP is the code. You just simply could type in, however, the link that I gave you in the description and just shout it out. It's 1775coffee.com/TPP, or just go to 1775coffee.com and use the promo code TPP for the People's Pundit. This is 100K plus in prizes, and someone's walking away with it. It's 1 week left. It might as well be you, and you get a great cup of coffee to go with it. All right. Mystery blends. That's woke coffee over there. You gotta love this, man. Starbucks. Have you ever taken a look at the beans at Starbucks? I don't know how many of you know this. I've told this story before, but it is true. When I was very, very young, before they, of course, outsourced that too, and then the guy had to sell the company. I worked for a domestic coffee roasting company, and the guy was an artist in roasting coffee. He was incredible. And I really learned the difference between a good bean and a good roast and not. And the beans at these woke coffee companies, guys, are not legit good quality coffee. You may like it because all the crap that they pump in it, some chemical cocktail like 1775 says, but man, oh man, that is not a good cup of coffee like 1775. All right. Let's get to it. I do want to play one more, and I feel like I'm not going to have the time to play it. But there was one point where Peter brings up the fake growth in the Biden administration. And he breaks it down super easy. And of course, I think he's being a little bit oversimplistic, but he is doing it in a way that is that fits. And the funny thing is the media world will look at it, and the media world would say, oh, that's so stupid. But it's not. Let's see. This is Meet the Press, of course. Let's do it. Let's play it. I can't play it all, but I'm gonna play some of it. I want to play some of it because it's a simple way. He's talking about something that's a new rage. Everybody knows, and what he says may sound weird because I know quite a few people who scoffed at this clip. You know, Mediaites I'm talking about politicos, and I'm like, they just don't see it. To every other American between the shores of this country or outside of those three areas, it makes total sense. And if Silicon Valley wasn't lying to itself, it would even make sense to them. All right. So here's Navarro on Meet the Press talking about fake growth under Biden. Listen.
About both recession and inflation, because there was some really big news this last week. And I'm going to answer your question. Trust me on that. So,
by the way, did you hear what Peter did? You don't see that in the clip, but she asked him a question. It's definitely designed to talk about something that's negative for the administration, negative for the light. And what does he pivot to? What did I say should be the thing? It doesn't matter what the question is. What should the response be? And Peter did it. He did it.
Had really good news on the inflation front. Both the producer price index, which is wholesale prices, consumer price index, had the lowest print since fall of 2023. Really good news. And nobody expected that. And the reason why that kind of thing's happening is because the Trump policies on other fronts, oil's down to $61 a barrel. Okay, so, but the other thing, and this is like,
so
should have
good.
been in that little package you had at the beginning. The Congress passed the resolution, the budget resolution, which lays the groundwork for having the biggest, broadest tax cut in American history before August. Now, what does that mean? What does it mean for both recession and inflation? It means that we're going to have a debt neutral tax cut financed by tariff revenues that's going to stimulate, could be worth as much of 1.5 points in terms of GDP growth. At the same time, it's deflationary, not inflationary. It's unlike the Biden fiscal measures, which were just
He has
debt
her
driven.
pause it. He has her agreeing with him. Do you hear her? She doesn't know what she's talking about. She's going, yeah. Do you hear it? Because she doesn't really know. So she's just kind of nodding along in agreement. Guys, this is masterful. This is masterful stuff right now. And he don't even mean to do it. It's just how Peter is. He doesn't mean to do it. He's not trying to be Mr. This is just how Peter is. It's how he talks. I could stop it right there and that could be the end of it. But let's go a little, what do we have left? It's 15 seconds. Let's just wrap up the clip.
There's really good news here. And I predicted 50,000 on the Dow. I predicted a broad-based S&P rally. I don't even know this, Christian, but it was 7 AI stocks that pulled up the S&P 500 during the Biden years. That's not growth.
And yet.
Great. Just fantastic. Just absolutely fantastic. Take it down. We don't need any more. Just, that was masterful. And he's not, believe me, Peter does prepare, because I know Peter is a friend and I know what he does. He has his, bullet points. He tries to be concise. He's not trying to he's not trying to pull a David Brock where he sends out these bullet points and this is what we're all going to talk about this week. No, he knows what he's going to talk about. That's the topic. And he knows what he wants to talk about. He goes in prepared. And he delivers it though. And that's what matters here, how he's delivering it. And maybe I'm not being fair to Mr. Lutnick and showing a longer clips, but that's because I'm not trying to put you to sleep. Let's be real fair. If I just ran in a 1.5 minute or 3 minute clip of Lutnick, you guys would be like, no, is he back? Is he back? I'm sorry, Rich. I'm sorry. With Peter, you can watch and you're like, oh, it's just an average dude. Crack a beer. He's got me. Yeah. It makes sense now. I get it. The messenger matters a lot. The messenger matters a lot. All right. Because they got their own. The opposition to the Republican Party has their own messenger. And that messenger, of course, is not just the Democratic Party. It's not. If it was only the Democratic Party wouldn't stand a chance in this country. Not a snowball's chance in hell. It's 2:44. I don't know if I have the chance to bring up, because another one that Bannon mentioned was Stephen Miller. Now, I mean, I guess I could play some of it just so you know the context for the next clip. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, I'll have to. Yeah, let's do it. I can't play the whole thing. It's just too long. Stephen Miller has a tendency to do that. And that's the only criticism I'd have of Stephen Miller. He's a very smart guy. He does what I do, actually, which is ramble on a little bit too much. There's deep dives, Stephen, as my wife tells me. Rich, there are deep dives, and then there is drowning someone. All right. So Stephen Miller has a tendency to do that. However, he had to do it to Bill because everything Bill says is a lie in this clip, or it's a misrepresentation of the truth. So maybe it's not a malicious lie, but it's your typical corporate media misrepresentation of the truth. And Miller has to take some time to correct it point by point, because in his mind, he thinks every single thing there was wrong and I need to fix this. And at least he does it in a better way than somebody like a Lutnick, but I do still think it's a little bit too much for the average person. And for some people, he does come across, what's the word? Trying to be nice because I like him. He's cool. He's a good guy, but arrogant, you know? I mean, is that the word? I mean, let's get real here, folks. I haven't checked the comments here, but let me know if you agree with me. But he's very smart. I don't think he means it that way, but he doesn't like the media at all. All right. So before I can bring up the other clips, which we'll end up going through all the other stuff and close it out, just with a few brief words about the scope of the survey this month, which we are, I think we're on par to fund. I think so. It's kind of hard to tell. Sometimes it goes very slow and then it just blows up. All right. But share. The link is in the description. But it will end with that. But we're going to cycle through some other videos that really, this interview is a great part to run because we're talking about the same thing here that we're going to run through, or the same issue and the same way the media is. It all underscores how the media is, even though it's obviously not the same thing. And it's more recent. So this is what I mean when I say things continue throughout the week. The Sunday show lineup tease up what people are going to be running their mouth about for the rest of the week. And you have got to deliver that message before, because you're going to be dealing with it all Monday, at least. All right. All right. So here is Stephen Miller, of course, his White House senior advisor. And he's on Fox News, which everyone keeps saying is, Trump friendly or, right wing. It is not. Fox News is a corporatist, Wall Street, big pharma pushing, vaccine mandate loving, non-right wing entity. I'm sorry. They're very, they faked being right wing for years, but you have to understand that these media anchors are as much actors and actresses as they are journalists or entertainers. Okay. And that's really, honestly, that's the category they belong in now. All right, let's rock it.
Number one, DOJ said a federal court cannot compel the executive branch to engage in any mandated act of diplomacy or incursion upon the sovereignty of another nation. So your argument is that you don't have to bring him back home, but will you?
So I want to correct, I hate to do it, Bill, but I got to correct you on every single thing that you said because it was all wrong.
Everything's wrong.
First, we won the Supreme Court case. Clearly, 9-0. A district court judge said unconscionably that the president and his administration have to go into El Salvador and extradite one of their citizens, an El Salvadorian citizen, so that would be kidnapping, that we have to kidnap an El Salvadorian citizen against the will of his government and fly him back to America, which would be an unimaginable act and an invasion of El Salvador's sovereignty. So we appealed to the Supreme Court, and it said clearly, no district court can compel the president to exercise his Article 2 foreign powers in any way whatsoever. DOJ called me after that Supreme Court ruling, and they said, this is amazing. We won this case 9-0. We are in excellent standing here. So this has been portrayed wrong for 72 hours in the media. They said the most a court could ever compel you to do would be to facilitate return, which would basically mean if El Salvador voluntarily sends him back, we wouldn't block him at the airport. We would put him back into ICE detention, and then he would be deported either back to El Salvador or somewhere else. The Supreme Court said that is the most the government can be expected to do. So we won the case handily. The misreporting on this has been atrocious.
Okay,
Secondly,
I appreciate
he was not, no, Bill, it's important. He was not mistakenly
Talk
sent
over him and
to
roll
El
over.
Salvador.
Okay, so do you still
He's
believe
an illegal
he is a
alien
member of
from
MS?
El Salvador. Hold on, this is important. In 2019, he was ordered deported. He has a final removal order from the United States. These are things that no one disputes. Where is he from? El Salvador. Where is he a resident and citizen of? El Salvador. Is he here illegally? Yes. Does he have a deportation order? Yes. A DOJ lawyer who has since been relieved of duty, a saboteur, a Democrat, put into a filing incorrectly that this was a mistaken removal. It was not. This was the right person sent to the right place. Now, some have said, well, but he had a thing called a withholding order. So a withholding order means you've been ordered deported, but an immigration judge is saying you cannot go back to a particular country. Here's the thing. If you are a member of a foreign terrorist organization, you cannot have a withholding order. Since he's in MS-13, there is no withholding
so
order.
You just
Furthermore,
answered
the
my
gang,
question.
the
Just give me a
gang,
chance.
the gang that he is accused
I get
of
it.
being
I get it.
persecuted
Just
by
give me a
doesn't
chance.
exist anymore in El Salvador. The 18th Street gang is gone. So you have an illegal alien from El Salvador. Bill, where are we supposed to send the illegal alien from El Salvador?
You haven't even
To
allowed
what
me to
country?
ask you a question.
But he had to steamroll you, Bill, because you didn't say anything true. All right. But after you got out the 18th Street gang, I mean, that was like probably 30 seconds over the line. Like, effective messaging isn't just about droning on. You do want to flood the zone with your message, but you cannot do it in a way where you start to turn people off because you're talking too much or you're too brash or whatever it may be. Like, there's a right way to do it. He was probably about 15 or 20 seconds, not 30, but like 15 to 20 seconds over that line. And 15 to 20 seconds is all it takes for people to start turning it off. All right, so let's hear the rest of the exchange. I mean, we got 32 seconds. What's the difference?
Are you convinced he is still a member of MS-13? That was your original charge.
Yes. Not only, but here's the thing, Bill. Yes, but here, not only am I convinced of it, not only is El Salvador convinced of it, Bill, he's an illegal alien from El Salvador with the deportation order. So his only options in life, Bill, his only options in life are to be deported to El Salvador or to be deported to some other country. That's it. He has a deportation order. So, Bill, you tell me, what country should we deport him to? Tell me, please. Tell me.
So Marco Rubio on Sunday morning said this.
He didn't answer,
on Saturday night, another 10 criminals from the
He didn't answer, of course, right? He's not going to answer that, obviously. But his only option in life, that's pretty good. That's pretty funny. I got to give it to him. There is also that, and I've heard this before, this stupid rebuttal. Are you convinced he's still in MS-13? It's not the job of the federal government to follow up with somebody to see if they exited gang life. And by the way, something that is almost impossible for the vast majority of gang members to do, including people who want to get out of a gang like MS-13. That is for life. You don't just walk out of MS-13 like, that's it, I'm done now. Because why? You got a withholding order? It is pretty much prima facie, on its face, totally ludicrous to expect the federal government to investigate every single illegal alien before they're deported because they're a member of a foreign terrorist organization, whether or not they are still a member, or because they were a member, they were deemed at some point to be associated with or be a member of a terrorist organization, a violent, horribly violent gang like MS-13. It is ridiculous. Tell us, Bill, do we need another agency for all of these people? Let me guess. The answer to this is that we need another agency to decide whether or not these people who are already deemed a green light for deportation because of this reason. All right. By the way, that's why the Trump administration, of course, designated this group a terrorist organization, because he needed to carry out these orders. And they've been using slime ball immigration attorneys who love illegal immigration and just don't give two shits about destroying the country or invading the country, because they're making a fortune off of human trafficking. These are the biggest scumbags among the biggest scumbags on planet Earth. They're right up there with Wall Street fat cats. They're disgusting. I brought this up last week. Horrible human beings who act like they're being civil rights activists. It's even worse in some instances. They act like they're the good guys in this, when in fact they're key. They are vital to this entire human smuggling operation. And they know it. It's all an act. So it just so happens. Sorry, I got this clip from RCP, so it's going to have this like black border around it. But it just so happens we have the president of El Salvador, in the United States, meeting with the president. And this is his take on this case, among others, about in general, just like what this judge and the media, how they're phrasing it, what they are really saying. And he calls it, and I quote, preposterous. Preposterous. All right, here we go. And we're going to talk, actually, they're going to talk, excuse me, about this entire concept today, about whether, about the media and their role. And it's like, if you're going to lie about things to hurt Trump and his supporters and the Trump agenda, if those things are good things, then you're ultimately hurting the country. You're hurting the American people. And because you don't find anything wrong with that, we can only reasonably and rationally draw several conclusions about the media. One, the president's going to say in another clip, I'm not going to say it. But two, you're not acting in their best interest, are you? I've said many, 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 many times that the statement Trump made years ago that the media, the fake news media, is the enemy of the American people is a true statement. By definition, Webster, Merriam, look it up. Friend doesn't lie to you on purpose. A friend doesn't mislead you or seek to harm you with their lies and deceptions. That is the action of those are the actions of an enemy. Now, I'm not saying go do anything stupid, but let's call it what it is. They are your enemy because they are lying to you about things that they know are going to hurt you if you take their word for it. But they don't care. Another example I'll bring up before I play this clip, mass shootings in this country. Once upon a time, you could get great reporting out of Mother Jones, of all places, on the Columbine effect. What we now call copycats. The media, as academia and law enforcement studies have shown repeatedly, and they have been made aware, believe me, especially when it comes to school shootings, which is worse. We're dealing with children. They are the contagion. The media. They are the contagion. And they don't give a shit. All they care about is their agenda, which is an anti-Second Amendment agenda, and they don't care how many times the Federal Bureau of Investigation or local law enforcement, any law enforcement entity, any academic institution, any study, whatever, tell them that they are causing secondary and tertiary shooting events that are often more deadly than the initial. Essentially, you have the blood of these dead kids on your hands. They don't care. They just want your Second Amendment rights. They want you disarmed, and they want you unable to defend yourselves. They couldn't care less about these children. And then they grab the parents, these poor people that our heart goes out to, you know, the parents of the victims of places like Sandy Hook and other places, and they exploit them. They don't care. Is that your friend? Anyway, you have Bukele here, all right, talking about Mr. Garcia and sitting in the White House. And both of these presidents will refer to the media. This is for those of you who don't know who he is. He, of course, is the president of El Salvador. He is him and, oh my goodness, Javier Milei are like Trumps, along with Bolsonaro, are like Trumps of Latin America. A laboratory of socialism that failed spectacularly. Let's play the clip.
Can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm supposedly not suggesting that I smuggle a terrorist into the United States, right?
It's
I mean,
always
how can I smuggle how can I return him to the United States? Like, I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, I mean, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
So you can release him inside El Salvador.
Yeah, but I'm not releasing. I mean, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. I mean, we just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into the releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? And that's not going to happen.
They'd love
Well,
it.
they'd love to have a criminal,
Yeah,
released.
Of course.
I mean, there's a
So
fascination.
They would love it.
Yeah.
They're sick. These are sick people. Mark,
Look at his face. He thought it was hilarious. I'm sorry. Okay. I'll kill it. He thought it was hilarious. Look, locals, I'm going to read your tips before the end of the show today because they're absolutely fantastic. I just want to get into these real quick. Okay. Here's another clip that rolls in after this where they're talking about the media. Let's go.
we appreciate it. Thanks.
Actually, what you're doing with the border is remarkable. It has dropped, what, 95%? It's incredible.
As of this morning, 99%, 99.1% to be exact.
Why are those numbers not in the media?
Well, they get up with the fake news, like CNN over here doesn't want to put them out because they don't like putting out good numbers. They only like putting out because I think they hate our country actually.
Yeah, that's a very,
But it's a shame. You're right. Isn't that a great question? Why doesn't the media? Why don't they put out numbers?
yeah, 99%. I mean, it's crazy, right?
We're doing
It's a
it.
crazy turnaround.
Christy,
It's
can
a
you
crazy
maybe, say
turnaround.
a couple of words?
It's a crazy turnaround, he says. And I think the answer is obvious. They don't like Donald Trump. But again, do we have to really examine the question of whether or not they don't like the country? Isn't it evident? Because is it not a positive thing that the American public wanted? They believed we had two things going on: an inflation crisis, a cost of living crisis. Three, really. The world was on fire. And then also the second big one, of course, was immigration. We had an invasion. So inflation and invasion, inflation and invasion, inflation and invasion. This is why Donald Trump won the election. So do we really have to examine the question about whether or not they hate the country if they're doing this? And if they're lying about it, if they're covering it up, or they're omitting it, or they're minimizing it, right? And I told you last week, and we discussed this a little bit, that unfortunately it's just human nature. We have a terrible habit, voters, we have a terrible habit of forgetting the things that were broken that somebody was elected to fix. And the media knows that. And they're adding to that because they don't want Trump to get any approval whatsoever from ending the invasion, which he has single-handedly. There have been articles in the New York Times and the Los Angeles Times, which I found to be more compelling, articles in the Los Angeles Times about this very thing. The New York Times arguing that before Donald Trump, and not arguing, it's a fact, they admitted it, and it was stunning, that there was a worse stream of immigrants during the Biden administration than there was during the period when Ellis Island was taking in migrants legally from European countries, Southern particularly, and other European countries, right? And this was a 50-year period or something, right? 35, 50 years? I'd have to go back and look. But especially how it relates to the percentage of the overall population that is here. So totally unsustainable situation in order to remain a nation with a strong common national identity. Not possible. Even those who argue, and this is book club, if you're not a member of book club, the best place to follow us is on Locals, peoplespundit.locals.com, peoplespundit.locals.com. And we have a book club. YouTube members also get the link every Sunday. Next Sunday, obviously, this coming Sunday, obviously, we're not going to have a book club. It's Easter. We're going to skip this week. And I'm always on, we were joking yesterday. I'm always on autopilot. And I'm like, all right, everybody, have a great week. I'll see you next Sunday. And we're going to do, and everyone was like, are we doing Gandhi next week? Because I'm pretty sure next week is Easter Sunday. And I'm like, gone. No, I'll be at my church having an Easter egg hunt. And then I'll be at my house having Easter dinner, having lamb, cooking lamb the way my grandmother cooked lamb for Easter. I will not be here myself. I forget. But in any event, even those who argue that there are unique identities, and you can take a country like America, for instance, there are unique identities and they contribute to a national character, right? And it doesn't have to be nativist in nature, for instance. You have somebody like W.E.B. Du Bois, who we read 2 weeks ago, who argued the same thing. Well, you have Renan, right? And then this just past one, we read an argument against Renan saying, you know what, you're bringing up the British identity, but that's nothing but a collection of Anglo-Saxons that mixed with Danes and Northmen, and right? So Normans, basically, right? So there's these arguments, but all of them make the case so far that you simply cannot have a national identity under that kind of pressure. There has to be time. Even if you believe in the melting pot, there has to be time for the pot to melt. The mosaic isn't a thing. The mosaic is the end of your nation. That's called decay. National decay. That's what it's called. It's a shame that we don't discuss these things the way that they actually are. We have unserious conversations. And it's because a lot of these media people are stupid. They're not smart people. They just think they are. Which leads us to the end here before I read your locals' comments. Dana Bash from CNN actually felt it necessary to go on her show and reply to what Trump just said. I kid you not.
To you, I just want to say, for the record, since we heard President Trump say in the Oval Office that CNN hates our country, CNN does not hate our country. That should go without saying. I've been here for 32 years, and I see a rhetorical device in him trying to say such a thing. That said, I want to focus on the news that we heard.
And in that interview, he will go on and say that the White House isn't even the littlest bit worried about a recession. Okay? I don't know if that's a great idea to say. My message would be, if there is a small recession now, it will make it seem, like I said before, like you forgot to eat lunch today compared to the starvation you're going to experience under the collapse of this country in the current direction it's going. If we sit here and do nothing, we know for certain that the trade deficit will balloon, growth will never have a chance to pay off some of our debt with the private sector growth. Will never have a chance to pay off some of our public sector debt through revenues. Doesn't matter how much economic activity booms. And we will collapse. You've been run by a bunch of people who are too cowardly to confront this. I'm in a unique position where I don't have to worry about re-election, so I'm going to do something about it. That's the answer. Confidently and boldly. The drug addict thing. The drug addict analogy. If you were a drug addict, should you just stay addicted? What's going to happen to you in the long term? As AA always says, there's only a few places you can end up. Dead or locked up. It's the same thing here. It's better to wean yourself off now, experience the short-term pain to make yourself healthy in the future. Otherwise, there's only one ending for addicts. And we are economic addicts right now. Go on CNN and do this. Shall I bring up the CNN town hall with Sheriff Scott Israel and Dana Lash after the shooting in Florida, the Parkland shooting, and CNN and their behavior during that? By the way, they were told not to do that town hall at the time. Dana Lash was a spokeswoman, not this Lash. At the time, she was a spokesperson for the NRA. It was a pile-on session that glorified, named several times the shooter, took away his responsibility, took away his family's responsibility and his parents' responsibility for what happened, and glorified the shit out of him. So much for don't name, don't cover, don't glorify, don't give another unstable child a reason to be jealous of the attention that shooter is getting and seek to outdo that shooter himself, which is what they do, and they know it. I've been here for 30 years. Right. You've been sabotaging and doing a disservice to this country for decades at CNN. Yes, you have. All right. CNN is an awful organization. All right, let me read a couple of the comments from locals, which are just fantastic. I think Dread Robert is the first. We're going to start here with Dread Roberts. There's a difference in opinion among these people. We were talking, this is referring to Lutnick versus Navarro. They can all win, but their goals are not the same for the tariffs. The money men that bring jobs back and the national defense people, not to mention the folks who want markets open for the U.S. Thus, Elon, Navarro, Lutnick, and others have different reasons and goals for tariffs, so there is no unified message. Borrowed from Dan at Lotus Eaters, reciprocal tariffs are not the same as protective tariffs, not just how good a communicator. It's true. But, I mean, we could start with that. Lutnick is not the guy to trot out to speak to the working class. But I do think you're onto something. Trump's trying to put together a coalition of people here who can advance his agenda. And some of them have different motives and they have different interests, right? So maybe their messaging isn't always the same. Recognized. Good. And I think it's a valid point. So then stop trotting out everybody. Trot out the people who speak to those who matter more. Let's get real. And those are the people who are hurt by this current system. Those are the people who were virtuous enough, and I'm saying this, I'm going to use this word, and I normally don't, but I'm going to make this distinction. Because I'm thinking about that voter we talked about on Mark Halperin's show two-way before the election. She was not one of the people who are in the crosshairs of this current system, or what Robert Kennedy called a brutal form of kind of like this soft socialism for the elites and wannabe elites, and this brutal fascism that leaves everybody else behind. She's not one of those who are left all behind, but she was virtuous enough to care about the condition of her fellow Americans. She'll understand the Peter Navarro message. She'll understand. And that's who you can talk to, along with the core group that you're even doing this for. Lutnick is out there talking to Wall Street. Wall Street cares what they think. By the way, the NASDAQ's up. Tariffs will have no long-term impact on Wall Street. None. The stock market is not the economy. It's not. I know. And son of a Mitch makes another really good point. I saw this too. Lutnick was really engaging on his podcast. And on his podcast interview. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe he is one of those people who caters to his audiences. And he's on corporate media and he's thinking about that audience, right? Who's going to be watching? Also, Maria Bartiromo, that kind of stuff. You know, like who's going to be watching that? Mike, if you're out in the audience, you know what I'm talking about. Lutnick's talking to those people, your people, and who used to be, I don't ever call them my people, but I did work with them and around them and in that world. Thank God I don't. I wasn't raised in it. I wasn't, well, I mean, I could go anywhere because it's just been something I've been able to do. I just didn't like it at all. Peter was awesome there. Definitely sideswipe the media. Yeah, he does. He sidelines the media. He does. And he makes them come across as pretentious, out of touch, which they are, right? I mean, Andrew, they're out of touch. They're pretentious, and all he's doing is bringing it down, bringing it back down. Oh, yeah. This is one of the later comments. Can you imagine how awful it would be to one of the parents who didn't take the bait from Sandy Hook? Look at Andrew. He's got, and you guys share a name. Look at Andrew. Super nice guy. He lost his daughter in Parkland. He's a pariah. He doesn't give a crap. He's a patriot. But he's a pariah in those circles. Just seeing your child used as red political meat waved in front of the masses and used as ammo to destroy Alex Jones? Is that what you wanted for your son or daughter? Shame on the psycho red midget lover Bobby Barnes, and the God may not judge you kinder than I. Yeah, I know. I know it. I would not do that with my child. I can't imagine the pain they're going through. I don't ever want to imagine the pain. I just don't think that I would let someone use them like that. Unless it was just, which this is not just. It's not. I also feel, I mean, he's remarried now and he's trying to go on with his life, although it's got to be tough to do it. But like, there have been other instances of this. Look at like Joe Kent, for instance, because the deep state thinks they know better than the president of the United States or the collective wisdom of the sovereign American voter who elects them. They disobeyed Donald Trump's orders. And Joe Kent's wife perished in a conflict that the president ordered to be shut down. That's her blood is on Mad Dog's hands. And the rest of them. I can kind of see that. That's just. But I would not allow somebody to use me or the memory of my child to subjugate other people, no matter how hurt. And I know it's easy for me to say that, but I really do believe that in my heart of hearts. And I don't think they think they're doing that at all. I think they're hurt, and I think that they probably honestly believe that those reforms would save children's lives. Unfortunately, we know from the studies done, by the way, under Eric Holder, when Eric Holder was the Attorney General, the Justice Department study concluded that there was no evidence that the temporary ban on semi-automatics, which is not even an accurate way, but yeah, I mean, that temporary ban that was passed, Dianne Feinstein's bill, didn't have an impact. And any reduction whatsoever could have been attributed to third-party reasons. Things like, and they're not really third-party, but outside factors, such as greater economic prosperity. And there's almost no, there is no evidence that the weapons ban from the 90s had any impact, positive impact whatsoever. In fact, before Parkland, I believe, the biggest mass killing event in a school was a bomb. All right. How many tax dollars and man hours of USCIS and ICE official do you want to waste on validating this person's background when there is time is needed to investigate other human trafficking who don't have deportation orders yet? That's exactly my point. I mean, to suggest that we're supposed to go back and check to make sure, like, oh, we're going to update your file, make sure you're still a member of MS-13, is just so freaking ridiculous on so many levels. Yeah, that's what we need. Another government agency, another incompetent waste of money. Give me a break. Give me a freaking break. We don't even need the Department of Homeland Security to have our immigration orders and laws enforced. Followed and enforced. The reason we have invasions at the border is not a lack of government or a lack of laws. It's a lack of will to enforce them. Trump comes in and it's over. Goes to show. All right, it's 3:20. We got a boogie. All right, scope of the project real quick. I just want to say this. Yeah, scope of the project real quick. We are going to keep this as, I don't want to say generic, but as typical as possible. We will do the economic confidence index, the registered voter economic confidence index. We'll do the approval rating, obviously, of the president, maybe even specific issues, the economy, inflation, immigration, foreign policy, the ones we did during the Biden era. Right track, wrong track, of course, the right direction, the direction of the country is really what it is. This is not in any particular order. I'm just simply rattling it off. We'll do favorabilities for leaders of Congress and the president and the vice president. Maybe we will throw Elon Musk in there. We'll also do a generic ballot. And then, of course, all of the juicy demographics that you can only get from the Public Polling Project, because nobody else does it like we do, baby. Nobody does as detailed demographics than we do. And of course, we will probably end up plotting it. All right. So again, if you want to see that happen, the best thing you could do is contribute, support it, share it. You know the drill. And let's hit the goal before the end. Actually, really just need to hit half of the goal, honestly, because it's included. That goal is including the last poll, which was not totally funded. All right. So, I mean, if we hit the goal of the one survey, we'll just do it. Oh, my son's home from school. My other one I got to go get. All right. So with that in mind, I'm out. Don't forget to like the videos if you like them and share them far and wide. The best place is always to follow us is right below peoplespundit.locals.com, peoplespundit.locals.com. Don't forget to check out 1775 Coffee. Get in that raffle. And then that'll give you an excuse to go try the coffee. It's very good. It's good. All right. And I knew Dave liked that. I talked to Dave about it too. And then we did that thing on Rumble, and then they reached out, and I'm like, you know how I am. I'm always like, I gotta like something in order to even think about having it on the show. All right. All right, guys, all the best. Have a great rest of your Monday. All right. It's the start of a new week. Think positive, positive in, positive out, right? You're going to have a positive week. Then you will, if you think you're going to, you will. You get what you put into things in life as anything else. All right, guys, I will see you soon. Thanks for watching as always. I'll see you tomorrow. Right? Tomorrow. Tuesday.